Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
So thank you very much, not just as an individual, but on behalf of Indoy. So at Indoy, we are a group of people whom we never knew each other. We got together, and the last 1.5 years, we're trying to analyze issues which actually affect citizens. Kind of got fed up with the screaming on TV and the kind of biased reporting which comes in print. So that is our small initiative towards ensuring that citizens get unbiased, actual information for them to make a decision. Today, we want to understand from you, since we are three generations, you being the senior generation, I being the quintessential middle age, and Sonali being the next gen. It's important to understand the past, the present, and the future of the standoff with China from a diplomatic perspective. The military perspective is a quick fix. We know what military options are, at least the limited knowledge that we have. But diplomacy, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, with folded hands, I actually say, diplomacy is the art of talking a lot, but saying very little. And today, I'm going to really keep my finger on my lips, and I'm going to want you to say what is the actual diplomatic situation. When did it begin? It's not as if there was a diplomatic standoff created like 6 months back. This must have been on the anvil for quite some decades. And what is the situation as we stand here? So, not just me, trust me when I say this, we have close to about 4.6 million people associated with us through YouTube. And everyone would want to understand without any kind of bias or interruptions or interjections, to actually understand the issue, so that that's knowledge. So it has to come from you, being India's foremost diplomatic face and brain. If I have to introduce you, it'll take me half an hour. I know you're short of time. So with folded hands, the platform is yours, sir.
Well, let me put it this way, that I've been dealing with China or associated with China in my days in the army, where I was before I joined the Foreign Service. My last posting was on the border of China in what was then the Northeast Frontier Agency and is now Arunachal Pradesh. Look, one thing we have to remember, but China and India are the two most ancient civilizations in the heartland of Asia. Normally, that should have brought us together. It does to an extent, but it also, there are divisive elements because of differences of history. India historically has never been outward looking, or in the sense of in terms of territory. The Chinese were either taken over by the Mongol period, people like the Mongols, whom they thereafter ruled and still continue to rule. And therefore, warfare, change of borders is something to them which is a natural course. In the early years, when they were under British rule, which not British rule, but subject to British hegemony, which it was an awful experience for them, insofar as being forced to consume more opium. What the opium was, as they were called. But I think then they moved from Sun Yat-sen to Mao to independence. But they did retain a certain distinct Chinese history. Very arrogant, I would say, to a certain extent, to use a strong term. Proud of their history, but it is not like India. We are proud of our history. but that's not combined with arrogance. That is a very much and a sense of superiority. That's very much a part of their thinking, and that has led them to conflicts with Japan, with Korea, and at the heart of World War II, at least, they were very much there. Now, after independence, I think Mao came in as a communist. In my view, he was nothing but a Chinese nationalist who couldn't bear Soviet domination. So the whole war, the period when the Soviet Union was there, was dominated by two communist powers who should have been linked according to Karl Marx, but fought a bitter battle against each other. Till the Soviets finally gave them a pretty bad thrashing in the 1970s. So I think, and this has been a part of their relations with the Russians. They've regarded all outsiders and particularly Westerners as barbarians. But I must say the most outstanding leader, I think, of the last century was China's Deng Xiaoping. He converted a sleepy, communist, backward society into a modern one within a span of 3 decades. I think that is a remarkable achievement for the last century. Now, that has been carried forward. Deng was not by any sense, a national chauvinist, but he did have his pride. He invaded Vietnam, and the Vietnamese gave him a beating, and I recall the Vietnamese foreign minister telling me that, we are used to the Chinese coming in. They normally come in with their horses, but they're forced to leave without their horses when they come into Vietnam. And that's what we did to them in 1979. So this sort of enmity with Japan, this rivalry is very strong. It's much stronger than what you have in the subcontinent, except with regard to Pakistan, which is a class act by itself. So we have to understand that. With regard to India, I think there were too many illusions on our side. We were rather patronizing. We thought we'd become independent before them, British educated, whereas Zhou Enlai was a very sophisticated guy. But they did have their own sense of history. And the developments of on the border came from that. I think we got into a war which we should not have. We were not prepared for, and we got a sound thrashing, which we are still recovering from psychologically. The psychological element is still there. In the meantime, China has moved way ahead. I went with Rajiv Gandhi when we made a path-making trip. In fact, that visit took place when the Chinese had taken a part of or infiltrated into a part of Arunachal Pradesh. And we surrounded them, but gave them an exit in a place called Sundarongchu. So that was the first serious incident when they violated what we called as the line of control. They never clearly defined their borders, kept changing. But I think there were a few important things which we really clashed on the border, and I think we should recognize our role also in that, which was that the McMahon line, they were willing to accept with the little changes. What they were not willing to accept was our other border claims adjacent to Ladakh and Aksai Chin, for example, which really drove us into that conflict. There were differences, and I don't want to be overly nationalistic and say that they, at least Zhou Enlai did. I don't think other Chinese, and Deng Xiaoping did. I don't think other Chinese leaders do. The other Chinese leaders are by nature, by nationalism, expansionist. So what we are dealing with is a power highly proud of its history, its legacy, and now its position in the world. Fastest growing economy of the 20th century, modern armed forces, people with standard of living which has certainly improved over the last 3 decades, but though it is nowhere amongst the best in Asia. And this leads them, this nationalism leads them into this, and they have sought to dominate Asia. And militarily it didn't work, and so Xi Jinping has come out with this Belt and Road Initiative. Now, you must understand the Belt and Road Initiative. China went on a construction spree and has a huge amount of construction equipment, workers, and there's nothing left to construct by way of housing and so on in China.
Yeah.
So they use the surplus and pretend it is aid. It is really exploitation because it lands everybody. And the Sri Lankans were the first to learn to land in trouble by borrowing too much. In Africa, it's happened all across. It's happened in Djibouti, it's happened in Ethiopia, it's happened in Kenya, it's happened in Tanzania. Everyone borrows too much. Then he has to repay. And then the Chinese take over their mines and mining all their resources. So it's 21st century exploitation, if you ask me. And I don't think the Chinese see it that way, but it is that way. It's seen by others. That's one of their problems. They don't look at others as how others are seeing them. With regard to India, let us be very, very clear. They would not like to see the emergence of India anywhere near a rival power, because we combine then power and civilization, and they can't pretend to be superior to us in civilization because 240 million of them are Buddhists, and you know where they got their religion from. So that is very much a part of their thinking, and we do run into problems. They therefore try to limit our influence in our neighborhood. They do it. They've done it in Pakistan since 1976. Pakistan's nuclear weapon designs, their missiles, their fighter aircraft, their naval frigates coming in, everything is Chinese. There is no such thing as Pakistan Armed Forces. There's Chinese Armed Forces equipment in Pakistan. So, and they realize that it is what I call as an instrument for low-cost containment of India. They are, I think, now overreaching. There is a resentment in many countries on the Belt and Road Initiative. Even Myanmar, which is bang as a neighborhood, they coerce by supporting separatist groups like the United Wa State Army or the Rakhine groups, the Arakan Army. All as separatist groups are trained and supported in their territory and used as leverage to get concessions from Myanmar. So as I said, there is this business of an exploitative nature in their thinking. These are the issues we have to deal with. It is a power which is determined to see that India cannot challenge it. It will set up their regimes who are pro-it and anti-Indian. I mean, for example, they backed Mr. Rajapaksa when he was because of the Tamil crisis, he had his problems with India. But now they're pretty neutral about it because we made our peace with him. They backed Khalida Zia in Bangladesh, very anti-Indian. They backed an anti-Indian government in Maldives, which lost an election. So, I mean, they do this crudely, money, influence, patronage. They don't know how to influence a democracy. So I'm pretty sure they're going to end up where they are now, just north of us, in the same fate that they met in Sri Lanka or Maldives. Pakistan will remain their instrument. They're going to strengthen its navy. And we have now dropped all this pretense of being non-aligned and very moral and all that. I'm glad after much thought and perspiration and very little inspiration, joined the squad of the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. And I'll explain the reasons in the Q&A if you ask me about that.
Yes, yes, sir.
Why that quad is important. So we have confronted, therefore, still with their border claims. I think Mr. Modi tried his best. We were faced with Doklam, faced earlier on also in Arunachal Pradesh and elsewhere. And now they're back to coming at us through Ladakh. But there they have a genuine concern. We have shown in our maps Aksai Chin as a part of India. Aksai Chin is the sole piece of territory that connects Tibet and Xinjiang provinces. One a troublesome Buddhist province and one a more troublesome Islamic province. So, so and that's the problem of being a communist. Now, the thing is that they have to, they think we have ambitions on that. Perhaps we could have been more, if I want to say, empathetic towards them. But what's our territory is our territory, so we can always negotiate it. And that's where we stand. We are now they found, I think, in Ladakh, the roads we were building, the development work which was going on, an Air Force base at pretty close at Daulat Beg Oldi to the border and to the Aksai Chin. And they saw this road construction, and they repeated what they have done at least 3 or 4 times in the past. They intruded into Indian territory. That's where we stand.
I believe Sonali has a question, sir.
Sure.
Beta, you are on?
Yeah, Bharat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So, sir, my question is that, we are bordered by 2 countries, where we share a violent history with, Pakistan and China both. And we've been having diplomatic talks with them for years now. So the question is, how difficult or how different is it, negotiating or having diplomatic talks with China vis-a-vis Pakistan?
It depends on how the India-China relationship is. If they find they are coming under huge pressure from US, from others, then it doesn't make sense for them to create problems for us. That has happened in past when certainly when Jiang Zemin as president visited India. And we also thought we were reaching a settlement when in 2002, we signed an agreement defining the principles which will guide a boundary settlement. So, but they dodge that now for some strange reason. It doesn't suit them. They don't seem to realize that the Quad and other things are a response to their actions. I mean, they come and set up an anti-Indian government in Sri Lanka or Nepal or Bangladesh. They don't expect us to stay quiet. We will not stay quiet. And I think, therefore, at some stage or the other, we'll have to define this relationship with them. That has not happened. And then move ahead from there, because right now their claims on Ladakh have no bearing even to what happened during the 1962 conflict. I mean, they're claiming areas which were not there even then. So that's where we are.
Thank you, sir.
Going ahead, obviously the Indian military is doing what they can do and what they are best doing. And we are also engaging in diplomatic level talks at various levels. And yesterday we had a situation where in the global perspective or in the macro perspective, it's not even a drop in the ocean. 59 apps being banned is not even a drop in the ocean for the Chinese economy. It's not going to dent them also. Forget dent, they're not even going to raise eyebrows over it. But do these matter to the Chinese?
In symbolic terms, they do.
Okay.
Because here is a large country. India is not sort of Brunei or Ethiopia or something.
Yeah, we are the world's buyers. We are the world's buyers. We buy everything.
This could be a start of this. And I sincerely hope it is. Look, I've been a great supporter of ending license permit quota Raj and moving towards an open economy. But we deindustrialized our own country. That's the reality. And today, 70% of the mobile phones, including this one which I'm using here, are Chinese. That's the reality. And I'm not going to say my patriotism denies me the right to buy this. It's the best which is available, and it's being produced legally in India. But what has happened is we have failed in developing our own indigenous industry. In the name of liberalization, we brought in crony capitalism. Everything was delivered at our desk. We went ahead and built it. We never built indigenous capabilities. Let me give you a classic case. Electronics industries. You can't have an electronics industry which is worth your while without basic semiconductors and computer chips. Okay? People have been pushing for it and it has not come through. And the Chinese, and we get it from Taiwan or from the United States. The Chinese are now going to be in trouble on this when they go in with Taiwan because they don't produce too many themselves. And bear in mind, there are many people who are saying they're looking for place in Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is for access to river waters, which will give them their ability to put up such plants in Xinjiang or elsewhere. So I think we will, and I think Mr. Modi has recognized that. If you notice, self-reliance, it's oddly a terminology I used around the 20th of last month in Tribune, saying that unless we get out of these clutches of the Chinese by building our own industries, by all means, increase your duties to give your guys some advantage. But you should go about doing it. We gave up on everything and became merely a lazy society in very little innovation or importing everything. You lost our greatest strength, innovation. It was shown in information technology, but not in industry. Now, and therefore I believe that the next step, clamp down heavier duties on the Chinese, build your own electronics industry. And you know who's going to be can be your closest person to cooperate with? Taiwan. Taiwan is now investing billions for setting up computer chips in Arizona. And I think the Chinese will make some noises to which we can very politely tell them, hey, that you guys have been welcoming leaders from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as though they are our long-lost brothers. So forget it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And we will develop our relations with Taiwan. Again, either you want to get too scared of China, or you just don't know how to deal with it. I mean, all that you have to tell them is, look, we're not making them a government, but we're going to respect their leaders. You invite the leaders from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Why can't I invite leaders from Taiwan? So I think when you assert your independence in that way, people respect you. Otherwise, and the other thing is, under no circumstances should we allow Huawei to take over our communications industry. Everything which the Prime Minister of India talks in the morning, if he's wedded to his wife, it will be on Chinese phones. That's the way it will go. So I think deal with them politely, correctly. This is going to be a tough one because what we are going through, they are well entrenched. And you really, I mean, you can't blame the army, they can't defend every inch of the border. And the other thing is, you can't blame the diplomat because we've been asking the Chinese, let's go by the 2002 Manmohan Singh agreement. Let us define the line of actual control, they lodge you. So they are a power out to cut you to size, make no mistakes. And the answer to that is not to get excited, not to get into war cries. Learn to defend yourself and let your industry grow. You grow 8% or 10% as they were growing for 2 decades. You'll just be doing fine.
Uh, we see a lot of things on social media actually, and social media is the least trustworthy when it comes to any kind of information.
Mhm.
And the Chinese are talking about banning apps in India, and how freedom of expression has been stifled. But the simplest question I would, you know, obviously you would know the answer also. I've lived in China. I've lived in southern part of China, not now, but a decade back, and we had no access to any of the so-called major apps. Uh, when they themselves don't give you the freedom, how can they expect protection from the laws of the land here in India?
Well, the point is this. You made the laws of the land a bit too easy for them. And when you squeeze them now, they're going to say, hey, why are you squeezing us? And let me say this, that it won't even be most favored nation treatment for them, because then they will be just given the duties everybody else pays. Now, you can't penalize everybody for what is happening with China, least of all our neighboring countries. So I think that how we're going to work this out, what form of controls or regulations we bring remains to be seen. I am not comfortable in terms of our security to having so many foreign communications equipment here. I mean, you go to these telephone companies, all their communication equipment is bought from Huawei, our own Airtel, whatever. So, as I said, uh, we have to go back to basics. Yes, don't go back to license, permit, quota, or Raj, but by because I'm a great believer in free enterprise, but have sensible regulations which give people an incentive to invest in industry in India. And I'll tell you one more thing. Um, we have the most rotten services I have known anywhere in the world in speed of doing business. You know, I have a relative of mine in America who went around and, representing his country and investing in container lifting cranes. He's incidentally related also by marriage. And $250 million project was cleared within 3 weeks, completed within 2 years. That is Chinese, the way the Chinese operate. I always tell our communists in India, please learn how the private sector has to be encouraged by going to this is Xinjiang, that's how the Chinese do it. And I don't want a one-party state in my country, definitely not. But if I can have the Chinese economic model without, because in any case, there if you're a Communist Party member, you get all sorts of privileges.
Oh yeah.
The last prime minister, his family had assets worth $2 billion, so that's fine. But we have it in India also. But I think this is something we have to bear in mind. You have to learn to be business friendly. Why did Nokia close up and leave Tamil Nadu, which really is the most investment friendly state in the country? I mean, these are serious issues we should ask ourselves. I mean, if they were leaving, we should have given someone else the facilities to come in. Instead, you go about 10 kilometers from where I live in Noida and see how the amount of land and everything the Chinese have got. The Chinese know the right ways of getting around our system.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
They're very old at business. They're very old at business.
they're very
Actually, the
adept.
Chinese, the Israelis, the Jews, and Indians, they were the ones who actually did business even
Yeah.
back a few thousand years back.
Or
Uh,
some of us would say business. Yeah, all right.
Sonali,
Yes, Bharat.
yes.
So I think, sir, from my side, I would want to understand, going beyond this issue, some of the suggestions that you would like to give the next gen diplomats and the aspiring diplomats, going beyond this, because you're experienced, for so many years. What are some of the things you would like to say to, the youth today?
I mean, whichever country you go to, learn, including the language, understand the people, and see how you can fit it into what India needs from that country. It's a complex process. At the earlier stages of career, you advise on the other parts, but by the time you put in about 15, 20 years of service, you're already implementing. And then it matters. So to the younger generation, understand the people of the country you are going to, understand its history, its economy, and above all, learn to listen instead of talk. Our chaps talk too much and listen too little. It's the art of listening to others is important to imbibe.
Correct, correct. No, that's absolutely true, sir. Thank you so much for that, amazing explanation, enriching explanation of this entire issue. I think, and for your time as well, sir. Thank you. I know you're a very busy person, so thank you for taking out this time as well. And I think, it's been great having this interaction.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.